She's sleeping right now.
Why is she dirty?
Miss, I didn't have time to clean her today.
Did she eat today?
No, none of us ate today.
Go ahead.
Not yet.
This is MEC TV. Welcome to Collegiate Combat. I'm Desmond Sorial, and these are my hosts,
Tanisha, Raptors,
and Sandy Cummings.
Collegiate Combat is the name of our show. We have entitled it this because we feel that it will educate the minds of young Black, African American, and Latino youths coming into college.
Today, our discussion will cover varying topics: crack, homelessness, AIDS, child abuse, police brutality, decrease in funding in education, abortion, and religion.
we'll get started with our first topic, child abuse, after this commercial break.
Oh, God, you drive me crazy.
Hello, my name is Karen Lloyd. I'm from the Bureau of Child Welfare. I came to inspect your home. We had a call from your relative, Aunt Linda, and she said that you have been psychologically neglecting your child, and I came to
Just
inspect.
come in.
Is this your child?
It's the only child in.
Why is she so dirty?
I haven't had a chance to bathe her yet.
You could at least wash her face.
I didn't have time for that.
Did she eat?
No.
It's 12 o'clock.
Do you see any food here?
Children should be eating lunch at 12 o'clock, the second square meal of the day.
Oh, gosh, another speech.
That's what's wrong with you mothers today. You're always psychologically neglecting your child,
Are you a
not
mother?
knowing it.
Are you a mother?
Yes, I am a mother. I'm a mother of two. And they do not get psychologically neglected. Such a cute child. Well, this child will be taken from your home for psychologically neglecting, and we will get back to you.
So take her. I didn't want her anyway. And you have a nice day.
Me too.
Welcome back to Collegiate Combat. Our first topic is child abuse. Sandra?
Child abuse seems to be more prevalent these days. There are children having children and not being able to cope with them. If a teenager is pregnant, or anyone is pregnant, they should be given, along with prenatal care, some form of counseling as to what to expect children to do, and have a network where they can go to and get resource material on how to deal with the problems that are occurring in the home. Karen, do you have anything on the subject today?
Yes, there are different types of psychological neglect. There are different types of abuses, child abuses, that parents today does not know what's going on in their home. They might be abusing their child themselves. There is emotional abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, and exploitation. All these abuses are related into what goes on in a child's life. A child should not be abused by the parent because the parent does not own the child. The parent just take care of the child rarely until the age 18 or above.
Does anyone else have anything to add on the subject?
It's physical abuse, where you have bruises, bite marks, belt buckles that cause bruises on the skin. You have grab marks, electric cord marks, burns with cigarettes under the sole of the feet, in the palm of the hand, in the hair. There's also hair loss, where you have children that don't have any hair because the parents are continuously pulling it.
I have a question. I wanted to
the child listen. There's a way of abusing the child where you have constantly lashing out to the child. You may have physical problems or mental problems, and you're lashing out to the child, and that's no way to solve the problem.
Well, with abuse, it's kind of hard to say how far can the government go with distinguishing whether or not it's abuse or whether you're just taking upon yourself how you grew up and the discipline and training that you had. You want to instill that in your children to get your point better across. Sometimes beatings aren't abuse; they're just discipline.
Well, disciplining and abusing are two different things. As she said, abusing is repeating the abuse. Discipline, you can talk as well as you might spank a child. Spanking a child and beating a child to death is two different things.
All right, thank you. We have a question over here.
Child abuse can sometimes lead into, discipline.
The other way around.
Yeah, the other way around. Because like by screaming at your child and stuff like that, a child would be emotionally abused sometimes. And sometimes a parent, screaming at you and stuff like that, and they figure that they disciplining you when in all actuality they're abusing you.
We have a question over here.
I'd like to ask, of all the child abuses, psychological and physical, which one do you think has the most far-reaching effects on the child?
Psychological,
Emotional.
If I may answer that question, I think that there are different sources of child abuse. And I think, in my opinion, that the greatest threat of child abuse comes from the government that consistently cuts childcare programs, that consistently spends money on weaponry and neglect the interests of our children. I think also the media that consistently portrays violence on its screens. I think that's another great source of child abuse. And I think out of those two sources of child abuse come the other sources, which I will call secondary sources. But I think the primary sources are from the government and the media and certain forces in this country that do not really have the interests of children at heart.
Well, I don't completely agree because I think that the government, they don't provide for the children, but also it's not solely up to the government, it's also in the home. From small, that these parents shouldn't let their kids run the street, or they shouldn't allow them to do things that they know are wrong, and a lot of that is that the parents don't want the responsibility, they want other people to have that responsibility, and it's not always like that. You have to bear the responsibility that you brought on yourself. You're the one who got pregnant with this child, so you felt that you were responsible enough to raise that child in a proper manner.
We are in agreement. That's why I said that there are various sources, but there are different levels. We are in basic agreement.
There are also some ways like you're saying at home, the child, a child may get pregnant with a child and raising that child, and you think, sometimes that child don't have a decision. The parents make the decision for the child and telling the child, well, I would help you. And then when the child comes, everybody comes out. So there's always a different form.
Well, some folks say that abortion is a solution to child abuse. What do you think?
I don't think abortion is a solution to child abuse.
Well, they say, if you don't have a kid, then you have nothing to worry about.
That's not true.
Take care of it.
But every time you get pregnant, it's an abuse towards yourself.
I think part of the solution will go back from the causes of child abuse. And I think one of the 4 solutions that we can work on is to make sure that people who represent us in state governments, city governments, federal governments, in an international scale, we should make sure that these people are representing the interests of our children. Also, I think as students can begin to research problem of child abuse in the community. Once we are sure that our future depends on our children, we should begin to research it and publish these research in our own newsletters or on flyers or on page or in newspapers and distribute it throughout the community so that people can be fully aware of the dimensions and how to approach this question of child abuse.
What about the issue of abortion in general?
Okay, we're going to discuss the issue of abortion in general.
What are your views on abortion? Do you feel that do you feel that abortion is right?
I have the belief that there should be certain abortion granted to people, and then there should be abortion. But it was told to me in a very remarkable way that abortions started out a long, long time ago during slavery, during the time of slavery. The female has stated that females believe that they did not want their children to be born in the type of life that they were living. And they started terminating the life of the children that wasn't born, which was like a protection to the unborn child. And I feel today in certain ways, and my philosophy is this: why bring a child into a world where there's no provision, no source of support, or if there's a problem of drugs in the female, if there's a problem of AIDS with the female, knowing that AIDS is a deadly disease.
I don't think, I don't want to say that's a prerequisite to bringing the child into the world. Because if all the parents had think like that, maybe probably I wouldn't be here. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity that my parents didn't have that type of mentality to think that way. So, I just want to say that we just have to find a general way of accommodating all these programs that we can offer the parents, some kind of counseling or some solution. Abortion is definitely not the solution.
It's not.
In which community do you think abortion is more prevalent? Is it in the minority community,
Well,
or in a more affluent community?
Well, we have to look at the dynamics. If we're looking at if we see that that blacks are not the majority, they don't hold the majority. Account. There's 230 million people in this nation, and black people just hold maybe 35% of that. So the 65% is a general overview of 65-35. So if we look at that, black people really cannot be the leading.
No, but if you look at the issue of abortion in the country, where do you think abortion is more prevalent? In the black community or in the other community?
Well,
I would not say per se that it's only in the black community. It would also, you would have to look at the whole situation on the whole. You would have to look at the inner cities, where most of your economical and social problems are. And relating to these social problems, economic problems, the answer to your question is that abortion is more prominent in the poor communities. Basically, in your black and Latin communities where you don't have, you're not working, no jobs, no homes, nowhere to feed the child. So it's basically geared in your black and Latin communities.
I disagree.
We have a few back there.
Yes, I disagree. I strongly believe that abortion is more prevalent in the more affluent communities, because your media has it publicized as if more blacks are going to get abortions. No, more whites are going to get abortions. They're doing it more secretly. they're going to their private doctors, they're taking their credit cards, they're doing it. They don't have Medicaid, so therefore it's not calculated by a Medicaid standard or some little hole-in-the-wall doctors. Not only that, that's why they should keep abortion legalized, because you will find more people that need to have an abortion for whatever the reason may be. If abortion was not legalized, they would have to run to these little hole in the walls, take the chances of being butchered, chopped, and killed. This way, you have a more sane, safer way of doing it. And to say that black people are having abortions, no, black people are having their children and sticking it out. That's why they may feel that there are more blacks on welfare. Why? Because they're handling their responsibility and saying, well, I made this child, I'm going to deal with it the best way I know how. A white person.
That there are more blacks on welfare.
No, I didn't say there was. I said they may have the idea that there are more blacks on welfare. Okay, but a white person, they automatically, they can go to their little private doctors, their little private clinics up in the suburbs, and no one ever knows that their little 12-year-old, 13, 15-year-old child was pregnant.
All right, Maxwell made a suggestion for solutions to research. A lot of the misinformation that we get from the media shapes our attitudes and our opinions. One of the things that I would like to have you consider is, why is there a promotion and a sale for abortions in our communities? And in terms of using the word minorities, that's one that I want to have you think about deleting from your vocabulary, because it sort of shapes a minority mentality. While abortions are offered by credit card, while you can now dial a condom, while the spiritual values say just say no, and the promotional activities on the media say yes, yes, yes,
To safe sex.
not only for safe sex, for frequent sex, and while the mentality is that you can have an abortion for population control. Let's have the fun without the family. Let's have the sex without the responsibilities. And this is pushed in your community. And then to deal with the basic and fundamental issues. Is abortion murder, pro-life? And should a woman who is pregnant consider that she has the right to her own body when she's carrying another body inside her? Issues, answers, research, reasons.
I wanted to ask a question. Well, as Professor Karim said, population control is something that the government really has been thinking about. And I wanted to know, does anybody feel that this abortion issue is a conspiracy with the government to control how many blacks are born into the community?
I would like to say that, to answer Professor Karim's question, actually her question incorporates his conception of a concentration of abortion in the black community, and her concept of whites having more abortions. Because the reality is, there appears to be a conspiracy to minimize the growth of the black population and to promote an expansion of the white community. Only because if you know your history, you know that black people as a whole are a majority of the world population, the colored people, black, brown, yellow. And the white constituents of this world are really the minority. Even though they're in control, if they see their numbers diminishing, they see a loss of power. And power is what it's all about. So if the black communities continue to populate as they are, it may pose a threat to their assumed power. Okay? And the fact that white people are getting abortions is adverse to their international position. Okay? So to say that, what I'm trying to say is, they want to curtail abortions in their community and re-emphasize it in our community for their own personal.
Okay, and I also wanted to bring up that thing that she said, the hypocrisy in democracy. I mean, everybody's saying just say no, when everything else is saying just say yes. I mean, what can we do about the films that portray sex as being fun, and that the condoms that are so so easily to get, or the abortions that are so easily, it's so many of them, you know, in the community. It's just, everything is just saying yes when they're telling us to say no.
In due respect to your first question, I think that it is very important that we understand these issues from a historical perspective. There is a book entitled Women, Race and Class by Angela Davis, and she approached it in a very interesting way. And we need to look at it historically for the simple reason that during slavery, it was okay to have millions and millions of black people because we were slaves, providing that type of free labor. Now that emancipation took place in the 1860s, the biggest question that was faced by America's white ruling circles was that, what are we going to do with all these millions of black people who were freed up from slavery? The question again is arising today, that in the 24th century, they're saying that the population here will be predominantly minority people, which people of African descent will hold a significant number, right? So the question now is coming up more urgent because we're hearing that George Bush and the other people surrounding him is talking about women should not have abortion. But who are they really speaking of? What they were looking at is that in the 21st century, seeing that we are going to be the majority, they have to step up on increasing their numbers. And this is where the question of abortion begins to really take shape, and where the relevance of Angela Davis's book, Women, Race and Class, comes in handy. We have to see it from a historical perspective to really, really grapple with it seriously, because it's an important question to the people who are dominating us. So we have to view it from those perspectives.
Okay, what about the hypocrisy in democracy? I mean, what can we do? Do you think that it's proper for these people to be portraying movies with sex, and on television they have sex, making it something not to be taken seriously, but just to do, just for the fact of doing it, you know?
We have to learn to evaluate information that's given to us. Be really critical about what is said. Look at what is said, read between the lines, dissect it, rearrange it, and see what facts you come up with, so that you'll be able to make a good judgment decision on whatever information is given to you.
But do you think that a 13 or 14-year-old child can...
A parent has to be selective in what their child sees and hears and does not see and does not hear. That's a parent's responsibility.
In instances like that, what you're saying with the media, TV, sex, read sex, the thing that we must do is counteract those type of things. In other words, in conjunction with what she said, the parents has to figure out a way to teach their children that the things that are being portrayed on TV is not the way it is. They have to be taught a reality of life on what safe sex is, what abortion is about, why it's happening, and then it has to be like an educational thing. It has to come from, certain points has to come from education. And
Who is to educate, parents or teachers?
well,
Who should educate?
there's a balance in that. On one hand, the parents should educate, and on the other hand, the teachers should educate. Okay?
How should the parent educate? How should
The parent has the responsibility to educate their child. That's your responsibility. To teach your child the difference between what the media is showing. Everybody, a lot of our people are being miseducated today and not knowing the difference between what our people should be doing or what the white man said we should be doing. It's just a lot of miseducation and a lot of
Don't you think that the school contributed to most of that miseducation that we have? Yeah, because if you think about it, our history, we never really learned much of our history. We learned the European history, and it took us until maybe about I don't know, about 17, 18 years old to find out who we really are. And don't you think that the school, I mean, if you depend on the school to educate your child, who knows what they're gonna be teaching them, you know?
A parent is supposed to educate their child from when they're young about the difference, about let me see, like,
I think you're getting education mixed up with morals.
no,
It's a
it's
parent's
not.
right to teach a child morals,
You're
not a teacher's. And we're talking
parent
about
is a teacher though.
Yes, parent is a teacher. We're sort of getting education and morals mixed up, muddled together when they're two separate entities.
But if we were to go back to the old teaching, you will find that your morals came with your teaching. Okay, your basic lessons were part of your morals. You knew what was right, what was wrong, what was expected of you, and it was passed on from you, from your grandmother to your mother, and so on. And the education that you got from home, you learned to challenge that with other people, and that's what we're not getting now. We're not getting the education and the morals inside of to challenge our teachers. So all we know is what they teach us. Okay, we learn to accept that. You need it at home to challenge what they tell them.
If you look at it today, if you just look around sitting here in this classroom, there's a lot of your upcoming young black Afrocentric teachers who will be teaching in this educational system. Now, I believe that the reason being that they are here is because they are now smelling the coffee, as I say. They are beginning, they want to teach the history because our history is a very important thing. And without that history and not knowing about it, there is no life for the African.
If I may push that argument along, I think that the education component of it is extremely crucial. But I think in the same breath of importance is the question of control of our communities. The reason why I'm saying that is that many times I speak with women, and they will say to you, the reason why I might have an abortion is because I do not think I will have the resources to give to that child. No, that's a valid reason. However, if our communities were not dispossessed, we have no land. You walk around in our communities, we have nothing of the nature of a King's Plaza. We have nothing to really own to say, well, when the young sisters grow up and they have their children, no problem, they will get a job. If they study accounting, they will come and work in a community business, apply their accounting skills, making a decent salary, so that they can see about their children. We have no control of our community. So apart from education, we need to use that education to begin now to control our communities, develop it, so that our sisters would not have to be thinking about having an abortion simply because they do not have enough resources, basically financial resources, to take care of that child.
Okay.
That's why I feel that abortion and sex education should be taught in school and at home. Because what the parents can tell you, the teachers may not. And what the teachers may tell you, the parents cannot explain. Because it's very hard for the parents to explain to their children about sex education. They may not know how to go about it.
Sometimes they were just disinformed by their parents, so they wouldn't be able to teach.
Or they just might just skip the subject in general, bring up something else. That's why children need to be informed at both places.
Well, in accordance with what Maxwell says, I mean, I think sometimes in the African American community, we're a little bit too passive. I mean, we allow a lot of things to go on that we really don't correct when they come up. I mean, like a lot of these Europeans coming in and taking over the businesses in our community.
That's because there's no unity in the
Right. Why wouldn't, African Americans take the initiative to form together and go in and purchase a business or cleaners? Why it has to always be the Asians or
Because there's no discrimination in banking.
I'm going to say that is doing part of education. See, because as parents, we have to take the time out in order to educate children and let them know the significance that education play a role, because there's only two things in society respect. That's education and money. And without those two, you have no power. So you must educate and you must empower yourself with education in order to gain certain resources so you can own certain establishment, that you can have a foothold, that you can say this belongs to this community. Without that, without education, there's a serious, we gotta come to grips with that social issue, education. That is a serious issue right now.
And I wanted to ask you a question since you brought up the point of education. Why is the government spending so much money on arms and wars out of the country and not putting enough money into the educational system in the United States? Because as it seems, compared to Japan and England and the West Indian countries, our education is so inferior to theirs.
I just did some research on that, and as America moved further away from educating the citizen, we could see the effects, because President Bush have made a great difference in implementing the worst education program within the last 4 years. He ran under the platform that he was the educational president, but instead we had a dismal performance under his administration. Educational funds have been cut almost every fiscal year, and we could see the situation is not going to get any better under his administration, so we have to really get out there and vote and make a difference, because unless we empower ourselves together, we are singly, we have no basis. Together, collectively, we can make a difference. I don't know if future President Clinton will be any better, but we know what already George Bush had offered. So education is for the black people, it's not.
Do you think a lot of black people get involved in who they put in office?
Nope.
Well, electoral votes are the one that really determine who the presidents are, but according, it's hard to really answer that question, because if you say that you don't really have a say-so, then why did our foreparents sacrifice so much in order just to get that right, just to say that I can make a difference if I go out and vote? We fought hard for that, so we don't want to say that that's not a viable tool. We have to use it.
Yeah, but black people make up the fewest percentage of the people who go out into the polls and actually vote.
You have to look at the reason why the blacks are so discontent with this quote-unquote vote. Okay? If you go down through the ages, well, through the years, time was voting, most of the people that was voting was white, and the platforms that they ran on, it didn't benefit the black people.
Yeah, but that's where the black people are supposed to get up and have a voice in that.
They didn't. The people were so miseducated at the time. They did not know what was going on when they were planning these so-called votes. And like Prince said, your vote is just a number, and they say unity is a number, but you have to look who really elects these people into office. These people are coming into office not through the votes, but through the electoral votes. In other words, they're being selected within this power structure. The power structure is electing the presidency and every other thing else. Yeah. And as far as the question about why is they spending so much money on space instead of education, that's a master plan. And it's a master plan to keep the masses of black people down. Like Maxwell said, within the 21st century, the black race will be the superior race.
I think black people need to stop making so many damn excuses for what they're not doing.
And speak out against it.
That's right.
Because if we don't speak out against it, nothing is going to change.
All they do is sit back and talk about, oh, well, we got to get black people in the people are even registered to vote? I mean, they got the tables sitting all up outside. Did anybody go over there and register to vote? I know why I did. I registered last year, didn't get my card. I did it again this year. You know, they sitting back talking about what's not being done. Then they talk about the education system. All right, you know President Bush is not giving you any money to the education system. Why? Because they find that a little bit more black people are starting to get into school suddenly. So of course they take that money back so that the rest of you won't be able to. And then while you have the opportunity to do so, you sit back and complain and go, oh well, there's no funds, this, that, and the other. How do you know if you never got up and looked?
All right.
There is another topic that I think we should discuss, and I think we all have some comment on it, and it's police brutality. Police brutality seems to be out there as blatant can get, and it's very disheartening in our community to see young people for what may seem to be the most minuscule reasons are losing their lives. People are being beaten up on television for the world to see, for us to see. What can we do as a community about it? Lucille, I know this is a subject that's close to your heart. Would you like to talk about it?
Yes. One of the reasons I find that police brutality has become one of the nation's problem toward blacks and Hispanic is because policemen have lack of communication with that community. They only comes there to patrol the neighborhood and leaves and go out and back into their community. They do not live in the intercity with the people. They cannot evaluate with the black community because they do not know the culture about the communities. And another aspect is because some polices have racial stereotype in the back of their head. I have done a research from a retired police officer named by Mr. Don Jackson in California. And he had came across some collection that was stated in a police station house in California that had said, official immediately, niggas are no longer to be called Negro or Jew, but seagulls because they stroll all night and shit on people every day, and that they are protected by the federal government. They do not have respect for blacks. They see blacks as being their enemy, as being the animal enemy. Ghetto as being a war zone. So when they get into these communities, they suspect everyone to be as a suspect, and they treat everyone as a suspect.
So is it just like stereotypes come into play?
Yes.
Just like with Orientals and Hispanic people, when you have to go into those areas?
Yes, because you can see that racism plays a little part in that also, because you can see that the case with Rodney King and those 4 police officers, we had evidence and it was viewed by millions of viewers on national television. When they went to court, they were acquitted. And the jurors were 10 white, 1 Latino, and 1 Asian. And a research had done on judges and jurors and how racism has influenced their lives. And one juror stated that they cannot divorce themselves from racism because it's existent in everyday life. So their views on black defendant as being a criminal, and that black should be punished, and that's a way of teaching them how to behave.
Yeah, but I have a question for you. Don't you think that maybe blacks might have brought it upon themselves because of the fact that they give police the perception that all they can do is rob and steal, and they had that like one image of one particular black minority, and they kind of say everybody else is like that, you know?
But you can't judge a few people out of a whole bunch. Like you can't judge an apple from the whole bunch. That's not everybody's mentality anyway.
Let's say you shouldn't judge, but too many people do.
Yeah, they do, but you shouldn't judge them.
Well, from a historic point of view, that the Europeans have always viewed black people as a threat. So this is nothing new. It's just the time is different, that's all. And we need to understand that white people do not have a very positive view of black people. Regardless whether you're well educated, you have an exorbitant amount of money, you're still black in their eyes. And they don't see you as equal, they see you as a token.
You mentioned that you were viewed as a threat by the dominant population in the United States. Why are you so threatened? And in the course of learning how to read and write, we would know, if we checked again history, that when slaves were caught trying to learn how to read and write, they were subjected to the most intense kind of punishment, including decapitation, including severance of limbs. We all saw Roots and Kunta Kinte, when he would not submit to being called Toby, was threatened with having his leg amputated. Well, what is it about an educated, well-informed student with a database that makes them a threat? Now let's define threat. Why would they be considered threats? Why are we considered threats? Why is it so hard for us to get, even a high school education? It's easier for us to get high than for us to get a high school education. Why?
Well, educated people always pose a threat, because that means that people can't tell them something that they have to believe. Because, if you have information, then you can also apply your information. That means that people they can't tell you things and make you believe it.
You can't miseducate you.
Yeah, because you know in your mind what is right and what's wrong. They can't just go and tell you something, and that means that it's Word of God, or that's the Bible. You know for yourself. You have your own mind, and you can speak out and stuff.
You challenge existing authority.
Nelson has a point he'd like to make.
I just like to say this as a point of history. All revolutions that occurred in history have started from educated classes. They don't start from the underclass that are illiterate or undereducated. The revolutions in most cases start from people that are aware of the social conditions and that fight. Cuba's a case in point. When Fidel Castro took over to Cuba back from the Americans. There's a case of the college students taking up arms, forming organizations to uproot the American influence that they put to the country. And that's what they're afraid of.
They're challenging that authority.
I feel that, as of what Ms. Karim said, that it's hard for us black people to get an education because we don't try as hard as we should. And we don't push ourselves that extra push as the white people push themselves as in to go as far as we do. So that's how I feel that we don't get, the proper education. We need to push ourselves more.
But I think you have to look at also social conditions, okay? And like what Melvin says, if we get educated to the max and we're going to say we're tired, we don't want no more, we've had enough, and that poses a threat to the power structure. They are afraid of overthrowing. Yes. Enough education. If you educate a few, and that few educate the mass is going to wake up to the point where they're going to say that they are tired.
All right, what is education? What is the purpose of education, or what should be the purpose of education?
I think in the words of African Americans are greatest historians. He said that education is to control power, or education is the exercise of power. I think that was a very interesting definition. From the position that we are actually educating ourselves to control, to bring nature under control. Whether we are studying physics, chemistry, sociology, history, the purpose of it is to make sure that human beings are organized on a basis that everyone can be happy. So that is why I agree with that definition that education is actually the exercise of power, teaching you how to control power and use it effectively and humanely as much as possible.
All right, is education solely? We're taught that we should become educated, get an education or get a better education so you can get a better what? Learn more so that you can do what? Earn more, right. So in other words, we are being programmed into the job format. But how many of us, let's say in high school, junior high school, are programmed to consider the opportunities for business?
Right.
All right. How many of us in junior high school and high school are given the opportunity to understand that we empower ourselves through knowledge, and that if we wisely apply and share knowledge, then we are operating on a humane basis? How many of us are taught that we should purchase land and property rather than rent all of our lives? Are we taught any of that?
No.
All right. In some places they are. It's just assumed. So
They basically base education and knowledge on what you learn from, you have to be in school to learn. And they don't learn about brothers like Malcolm X, who educated himself because he wanted that knowledge, and he wanted to be great. They'll let many leaders who never went to college, but that doesn't make them any less knowledgeable than the average person that went to school. And I think that's what they have to start letting people know. You don't educate just for the fact that you want a job. You educate because knowledge is power. And to gain power, you have to have knowledge. And you have to gain knowledge by reading. You just can't expect people just to give it to you. You have to go out there and get it because it's not going to fall in your lap.
And you have to share it by writing about it, not just talking about it. This is why writing is such an important skill. So you gain it by reading, share it by what? Writing. Do the right thing.
I like to make a point. It's a personal thing, right? When I was a kid, I used to have a inferiority complex with white people, right? Because everywhere I saw white folks, they was owning everything, they had everything. They was the ones coming out picking up the money, paying for the rent. I really had an inferiority complex. And a few years later, I took it upon myself to do some research, okay? I studied our history. And once I became aware of the beginnings of education, beginnings of civilization, beginnings of all the technological things that we give credit to other races for, I found out that we are actually the originators of it. I looked at myself different, and I could look at any white person in the eye and feel they equal, or I feel a little better. And what I'm saying is that a lot of young people today that don't have education is education, but a proper education is something that allows you to walk the streets, hold your head high, know who you are, and it's only a matter of knowing the truth from the knowledge that you're taught in school. It's not giving yourself undue credit or saying that you're better because you're not. It's only saying that the reality is that we have done a lot of great things in history, and we should be given credit for them. And if you don't know that, I know a lot of black kids, I say, well, where are you from? Where's your history? What is your ancestry? Well, I am from Africa, because they have a picture of Africa, Tarzan, trees, and swinging monkeys. I said, well, if the Irish come from Ireland, and the Italians come from Italy, where are you from?
Italian from Italy?
Italians?
Oh, I thought you said Chinese.
No, the Italians, if everyone has a nationality in the second country, and everyone has a homeland, where's yours? And a lot of young kids today don't want to pay homage to Africa because they don't know what it's all about. I think it's a shame.
Sometimes they don't have the picture of Tarzan as Africa, stuff like that. Sometimes they just see the complexion of certain people in Africa and they feel as though they're so dark, that they're not from Africa.
Why do black people have this feeling of self-hatred? Now that's the question. Why do we feel so bad about kinky hair and black skin and big lips? Why is that?
I wish.
No, because that's what
Because
society
I
has
wish I was
set
a
for
little
us.
blacker.
Me
That,
too.
no, that
I
is
wish
what
I was
society
black.
has set for us. They make you feel, because of television and movies and everything, that the lighter your skin complexion is the better you look, and the fitter you are, the more beautiful you look, and everything is based on this outer look.
But
They don't
nothing-
know that beauty
but that-
comes from
But
within.
nothing is prettier than
That's
black.
also where
There's
the
nothing
home
prettier
comes
than black.
back into play, okay? The home comes back into play, because my family, they really can travel, and they've been to Africa, okay? They went there for a month. They came back and they told us, I got almost white looking people in my family, first cousins now. My cousin Canberra is light, a little bit lighter than you. They told her, Canberra, you would be an outcast. Michelle, they would consider you the beautifulest thing over there. Why? Because you're dark. You know why? Because the darker you are over there, the more pure they consider you. The darker your hands, the darker your lips. They explained this to us. They didn't just go to Africa and came back and said, oh, we went to Africa and it's not Tarzan and trees and all that. My family brought it back and told us, those of us that did not go. That's right. That's what I said. It comes back to the home. What the school is not telling you, your family does have to tell you. And if they don't know, they can't tell you.
But everybody doesn't have the same family like you.
Right, but that's why, me being me, I would tell my other friends, like I told my other friends when they told me, I told them about the different things they ate, I told them about the different ways they lived and all of that. Okay, I didn't just take it and say, well, my family was African, and that was it. No,
Okay,
there's
I just
much
want
more
to
to it.
interrupt at this point, because we're about to close. And I want you to think of a question. Is the skin analysis as the evaluation for any person, whether or not they're white or black or brown, fair? Are we all on the planet together? And are we good or bad based on the skin analysis? You see? All right, that's a point for another discussion. Is there such a thing as black racism? Okay? What can we do in order to elevate ourselves without being over concerned about who is darker, who is lighter, who is whiter? And how did this come into our consciousness? You have to think about that. The hosts will have something to say.
The last topic for discussion,
We're going to
just
close
gonna-
now.
Oh, we're gonna
Yeah,
close
we
now?
can go.
Okay, so thanks for joining us on Collegiate Combat.
I hope that this panel has caused you to ask more questions about what is happening in your community and what you can do to change the things you don't like. Bye.
I would like to thank everybody for participating. It's been a good discussion. I would like to thank the video operator for doing such a wonderful job with our video, and everybody who sees this. I want you to know that we are Professor Karim's 003 writing class and 004 reading class. Thank you very much.